You catch it in half a second, a smile that doesn't quite reach the eyes, a laugh that lands a beat too late. Someone says, "I'm fine," and something in your chest quietly disagrees. You've spent your whole life noticing what other people are trained to miss. And somewhere along the way, you stopped trying to explain it, because every time you did, people looked at you like you were overthinking a moment that, to them, didn't even happen. If this already feels strangely familiar, take a moment to subscribe, because what comes next may explain things you've been trying to understand about yourself for years. Psychologists have long observed that a small percentage of people process deception differently than everyone else. Carl Jung believed the psyche grows new layers of perception every time it survives contradiction and disappointment. What most people never realize is that being hard to fool isn't something you're born with. It's a callus, formed slowly, built from every moment you believed something that turned out to be false and had to rebuild your radar from the wreckage. The strange thing is, the people who seem the most guarded were often once the most open. Their skepticism isn't cynicism. It's memory with a warning label attached. And by the end of this, you'll understand exactly which memory built yours. Here is the first reframe, and it might sting before it heals. That heaviness you carry, the reflex to double-check, to wait a little longer before you believe someone completely, was never a flaw in you. It's what happens when awareness grows faster than trust does. Overthinking becomes heightened perception. Isolation becomes clarity. What looked like distance from other people was, in truth, distance from illusion. You didn't become hard to fool because something in you broke. You became hard to fool because you refused to keep lying to yourself just to make someone else comfortable. Most people never make that trade. You did, and you've been paying a quiet price for it ever since. There's a specific kind of person this script is really about. Not the obvious liar. Not the stranger with the bad energy you avoid on instinct, the one who's nice to your face, the one everyone else trusts immediately, because why wouldn't they? They're so easy to like. You noticed something off about them before you had language for it, a compliment that felt like a transaction. Eye contact that held 1 second too long, like they were checking whether it worked. You'll meet this person again in a few minutes. Keep them in mind, because everything that follows eventually leads back to them. The first insight is about the lie you catch before there's any proof of it. A shift in tone mid-sentence, a pause that runs half a second too long. Psychologists call this micro-incongruence detection, the brain noticing when words and body language stop agreeing with each other. For most people, this registers as a flicker and disappears. For you, it sets off a full-body alarm. Your nervous system learned, somewhere back in your history, that safety depends on catching what everyone else lets slide. Once that wiring installs itself, it never fully shuts off again. It runs quietly in the background of every conversation you'll ever have for the rest of your life. But this is only where the story begins. The second insight circles back to the person who's nice to your face. Because here's what nobody tells you. You are almost never fooled by cruelty. Cruelty announces itself. You are fooled, occasionally, by warmth, because you don't expect deception to arrive smiling. This is why the wounds that cut deepest weren't from obvious manipulators. They were from the ones who seemed safe. Your guard was never built against evil. It was built against inconsistency. And when someone's actions finally stop matching their affection, it doesn't land as confusion. It lands as betrayal, because part of you saw it coming and hoped, just once, to be wrong. There's a reason that hope keeps happening, even to someone as perceptive as you. And it's not a weakness. It's the last insight, waiting for you at the end of this. Small talk exhausts you, not because you dislike people, because your mind is built to look past the surface. And surface-level conversation feels like reading a book with half the pages missing. This isn't social anxiety. It's efficiency. Your brain refuses to spend energy performing enthusiasm it doesn't actually feel. People call this arrogance sometimes, or coldness. It's neither. It's the quiet fatigue of a mind that sees too clearly to fake anything convincingly. You've learned to sit in rooms full of people and feel more alone than you do in complete silence. And for a long time, you thought that meant something was wrong with you. If you've ever felt this way, let me know in the comments. Your experience may be exactly what someone else reading the comments needs to hear. Your gut feelings were never guesses. Jung described intuition as the unconscious fusion of thousands of small observations the conscious mind never counts individually. When something felt off before you could explain why, that wasn't paranoia. That was pattern recognition outrunning language. You've spent years apologizing for instincts that turned out, later, to be correct. Explaining them away in the moment, only to be proven right weeks or months down the line, quietly, with no one around to say you told them so. Stop apologizing. That instinct has been protecting you since before you had the words to describe how. And here's the hardest truth of all 5, the one this entire story has been circling since the beginning. Trust, once broken, doesn't rebuild through an apology. It rebuilds through repetition, proof stacked on proof, over time you didn't ask for but now require. This is why you forgive slowly. Why some people never fully earn your certainty back, no matter how many times they ask. It isn't punishment. It's a system refusing to fail the same way twice. And this is exactly the piece that explains the person who's nice to your face. The one who kept getting a second chance you never consciously decided to give them. You gave it anyway. Because hope is louder than instinct, at least for a while. Something shifts once you stop resenting all of this and start recognizing it for what it actually is. The heaviness stops feeling like a burden and starts feeling like mastery, quiet and unannounced. You stop apologizing for noticing too much. You stop performing naivety just to keep other people comfortable. Your perception becomes something you trust instead of something you explain away to people who were never going to understand it anyway. Self-doubt goes quiet. Confidence stops being loud and starts being still. The kind of stillness that doesn't need anyone else's agreement to feel certain. This shift doesn't happen overnight, and it isn't dramatic when it finally arrives. It shows up in small moments. The conversation where you trust your read on someone within the first 5 minutes. And you're right, the relationship you walk away from earlier than you used to, because you no longer need proof you already have. The version of you that used to need permission to believe your own perception, slowly disappearing, replaced by someone who simply knows. Picture the version of you this becomes. Someone who listens twice as long as they speak, and hears the sentence underneath the sentence. Someone who chooses people slowly, and loves the ones they choose without reservation, because by the time they've let someone in, that person has already earned it completely. Someone who no longer needs anyone's permission to trust what they already sensed was true. Decisions get clearer, not because life simplifies, but because you finally stop lying to yourself about what you've known the whole time. And somewhere down the road, you meet someone like the one from earlier in this story, nice to your face, practice smile, compliment that feels a little too rehearsed. And this time, you don't second-guess the part of you that already knows. You don't wait for proof. You already have it. You just trust yourself enough, finally, to act on it the first time instead of the 5th. If you're committed to becoming this version of yourself, subscribe and join a community of people who are choosing depth over conformity. Maybe being impossible to fool was never about outsmarting other people. Maybe it was about refusing to keep fooling yourself, one uncomfortable truth at a time, until the discomfort turned into clarity. Perhaps what looked like weakness was actually wisdom, waiting patiently for a moment it knew was coming. And maybe the version of you that used to feel too guarded, too cautious, too hard to convince, wasn't broken at all. Maybe they were the only honest one in every room they ever walked into. Which part of this felt like something you've been living without having the words for? Share it in the comments below. Someone else may need to hear exactly what you have to say.